Hi, this is Simon Adamson from Expanding Circle, and in this video I'd like to show you what went on behind the scenes in the recording of the collection of songs we call the Best of 1967 to 1975. And you can find that collection of songs right here on YouTube, or else you could go to Spotify or iTunes. So the thing about this recording is it was an amateur project we did for fun between myself and Alex Berry-Hart, the songwriter, and this was all recorded in our homes with very basic low-cost equipment. And in fact the central piece of gear I used was a thing called a Zoom MRS 1608 multi-track recording studio, and this is something I bought 10 years ago, and at the time, even then, it was considered pretty much out of date and obsolete equipment. The reason I love to use it as opposed to Mac or PC is that it gives you a proper hardware control surface. It's got faders, it's got buttons like an old tape machine, and for me that just works really well. I really find it difficult getting on with working on PCs for that kind of task. So let's go and have a look at that Zoom multitrack recorder now. So here is the Zoom multitrack recording studio, and as you can see it's an all-in-one device, which was popular at the time, something that I don't think you can actually get these days. Everyone's recording on PC and Mac, etc. So on the back of the unit you've got your audio interfacing. You've got audio input level controls here, very comprehensive effects processing which can be inserted at various points in the signal chain. Zoom, being well known for their drum machines, originally have incorporated one of their drum machines within this unit here, which is jolly useful when you can't get hold of a drummer. And on the right hand side here we have tape transport style controls. Other buttons here are principally for selecting different functions, different menus on the display here. So it is possible to do quite a lot of comprehensive audio editing on this machine. It's much harder to do it here than it would be on say a PC or a Mac, because the display doesn't give you an audio waveform to work with. It's really just there for basic audio metering and to give you an idea of hours, minutes and seconds, or bar count here. The main beauty of this unit is that it's all portable. It's easy to take along to a session and set up and start recording really quickly. We've got a song just loaded up on here at the moment, and it's Once Before, which is one of the songs on the album. You can hear we've got the Wurlitzer piano on this channel. There's some vocals on here. So this machine's recording to hard disk, and having recorded all the channels, done some sub-mixes, which was necessary for all the many backing vocals that Alex likes to put on these songs, we'd then go to a mix down to stereo, and at the moment the desk is configured very approximately for that kind of scenario. So having recorded the song to mixed it down to stereo, then the next stage would be to actually back up the project onto a good old CD. So CD-ROM drive there. Having got it onto CD, of course, I could transport it into my PC, and I'll show you the stages that I went through later on the PC concerning the mastering. Okay, I'd like to say something about microphones, because the Expanding Circle album was recorded principally with these two microphones. On a couple of occasions when we were lucky enough to have Tom join us on the drums, we recorded the drums with three microphones, these two being included, but otherwise it's just, first of all, this rather cheap dynamic microphone that I bought 10 years ago for about £30 here in the UK. It's badged Yoga. I'm not aware of them having set the audio industry alight at any time, but it works well enough, I think. If I were to have my time again recording the vocals, instead of just sticking Alex in his bedroom and putting the microphone in front of him, I think we should have probably spent some time building something of a vocal booth, because the principal issue with that was the room had a pretty bad resonance around 2.5 kilohertz, and I spent my time trying to get around the problems that created later on, which wasn't really the way to do it. The other key microphone here, it's badged Fender. It also says it's made in Japan, so I'm guessing that Fender, as far as I know, they don't make microphones, so I think it's badged. And it's a condenser microphone, and as such it's pretty good on percussion. And I recorded all the harmonica and also the Wurlitzer piano with this microphone. So the Wurlitzer has a couple of very small built-in speakers, and so if you wind up the volume a little bit, you get a lovely distortion, which is quite characteristic of the sound of that piano. And I just popped a microphone in front of one of the speakers, and there it was. The Wurlitzer does have an audio output jack, but unfortunately, as is common with these units, it was unusable. I think it actually packed up altogether, sometimes a little bit crackly. So just use the microphone in front of the speaker. And I just want to add that my good friend Richard Smith loaned me this microphone. I think it was on a sort of indefinite basis. Anyway, it's been 20 years now, Richard, and I'd just like to say thanks, and it's doing sterling service. At the risk of making this a little bit too much like Spinal Tap, I'm going to talk you through some of the instruments I played on the Expanding Circle album. The good old-fashioned 10-hole diatonic harmonica. I played this with Expanding Circle, and diatonic harmonicas come in a number of different keys, so there's a little collection that I used on the different songs. So I started playing harmonica because I could no longer play guitar. There came a point where I developed arthritis that particularly affected my left fingers, and I couldn't play a guitar or bass for some time, which was great for the neighbours, not so good for me. So I was looking for an instrument I could play that didn't require fingers. So I taught myself how to play harmonica, and it was well worth the effort, I have to say. The great thing about the harmonica, you can just drop it in your pocket and it goes anywhere you go. With the guitar, I did end up playing guitar and bass on the Expanding Circle project, and luckily, you know, the guitars are just used a little bit like seasoning in cooking, just to add a little bit of flavour in the background. They're not the main deal by any means. And my journey back into playing guitar went via initially trying to just retune the guitars to open tunings and trying to play blues style with a slide, which I didn't really get on with too well. So over a period of time, and particularly through working on the songs with Expanding Circle, I found ways of using primarily open D or open D minor tunings to construct very simple chords with maybe only 3 or 4 notes in them, which was sufficient just for the backing, just to add a little bit of flavour in there. So the main guitar that I used for a lot of the tracks was this old Telecaster style guitar that I put together from bits and pieces when I was a teenager. It was indeed my first proper electric guitar and has served me very well. It does have a Strat style tremolo on there as well, or vibrato as it really should be called. And another guitar here is a mid-80s Japanese Gibson Les Paul copy. It does actually feature a lot of Gibson hardware and some ESP pickups. The woodwork is all Tokai, Japan. I think it was actually branded Double Eagle at the time. But this is a guitar that I like to use for more powerful parts. You can hear it on I Like It, it's one of the guitars on there. And also you can hear it sustaining that high note just after the thunderclap on Crossroads. And the sort of funky guitar on Knock Knock. This is the guitar I played through the wah-wah pedal on that track. So doing the retro style music that we do with Expanding Circle, how could I not have a 12 string? I've always wanted one of these. I ended up buying this just for the project, and here in the UK this is a little over £200, which I think is exceptional value for money. And as you can see, it's got a sort of Fender Jazzmaster style body. It is in fact a Revelation RJT60, and you can get this in a 6 or 12 string form. One of the great features is this multi-way selector, which gives you a phenomenal range of tones, actually, anything from something quite jangly, a bit like a Rickenbacker, through to a more mellow sound, which is good for those sort of more folky pieces like Requiem on the album. So some of those chords, playing on the 12 string, I'm really only using the top 8 strings. You can of course with an open tuning just bar across, but I like to just add a little, you know, other little notes in there. So just enough to get me by, really. Okay, so let's look at a real Rickenbacker, and I was lucky enough to find this on eBay. It was going cheap because it was slightly damaged. Doesn't really affect the playability. This is by no means a vintage instrument. This is about 2002, I think, and I love to use this for its jangly sound that really cuts through the mix. And you can hear this on the chord stabs on Lonely in My Dreams, Long Way to Go, and the little arpeggio towards the end of Guiding Melody. Lovely guitar, lovely to look at actually, never mind playing it, it's great just to have that on the wall. And last but by no means least is my 1973 Gibson Eb-3, and I was lucky enough to have this for, I think it was my 15th birthday, and I've had it ever since. Played it in school bands and college and that kind of thing. And it at the time I had it in the early 80s, it was second hand then, a very unfashionable instrument. You know, jazz funk was dominating the airwaves, so this was not the kind of thing for playing funk. Indeed, I would say it's the archetypal instrument of blues rock and the sort of glam rock era as well. And you can hear great exponents of the Eb-3 in Jack Bruce of Cream, Andy Fraser of Free, Trevor Bolder of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and the guy in Slade used to play one of these too. Great little bass. I appreciate this particularly with limited finger ability, because this is a medium scale bass. It just makes it a little bit easier to play, but I have to say I was struggling to play those bass lines on the Expanding Circle songs. So having talked about some of the instruments I played there on the songs, I'm now going to take you through the final stage of working on those songs, which was the mastering process. So I'll show you that on the PC. Here we are looking at the PC, and this is running a piece of free software called Waversaw, and Waversaw is something that you can use for recording and editing, applying special effects, all manner of different things actually. It's very useful. And we're looking at the waveform of the track Here's to All. You can see that if I play that now, this is in its original stereo mix form without any processing, and if I just pan across to the metering there, you probably see it's around about averaging minus 15 dBFS on the meter. And the whole thing about mastering is what you're trying to do is reduce the dynamic range so that the material is more suitable for broadcast and listening in a variety of environments. In recent decades, compression and the addition of a lot of gain, which increases the effective loudness of the piece, it's become a bit of an arms race. So if you listen to a contemporary popular release, it's incredibly loud, and that's really what the market seems to demand now. But back in the day, back in the late 60s and the early 70s, although compression and some gain addition was applied to recordings at the mastering stage, it was nothing like it is now. So with the Expanding Circle project, I was trying to be fairly conservative with the compression, but also making sure that it stood up reasonably against contemporary releases, which I hope it does. So the great thing about the Waversaw software is when you're running a plugin, such as I've got here, you can actually hear what you're doing in real time when you're playing around with the settings. The plugin in this case is from JB. It's called the Broadcast Processor, and what it is a 3-band compressor with a brick wall limiter. So a 3-band compressor divides the frequency spectrum up into the 3 bands. We've got the bass here, mid-range in the middle, treble at the top here on the right hand side. The actual crossovers for those frequency bands is set by some filters here. You've got controls for setting the threshold for the compression, the ratio of the compression, I'm typically using around 2:1, and also some gain settings pre and post compression. So obviously if you compress some audio, then you actually reduce the level, and so having reduced the peaks as you do with the compressor limiter, then you can add some gain, which increases the average level and loudness of the audio. So let me show you the effect of this. Right now we're just looking at the uncompressed waveform, and we're listening to it in that form as well. If I switch in the processing, you can hear it's immediately become much louder. And if I just stop that for a moment, if I apply the processing that I've set up here, it just takes a second or two to process the entire file, and you'll see the waveform jump. There you go. So now you can see how much the compression with gain addition as well has increased the average level of the audio here. So the great thing about JB audio processor, broadcast processor, is it also has some really great stereo enhancement features, and really it transforms the sound. I thoroughly recommend you try this out if you're doing some sort of audio processing work. So there we have it. That's the mastering stage. So I hope this video has given you some insights into how we recorded Expanding Circle's best of 1967 to 1975. Do go and check out that music. You can listen to it right here on YouTube. Also, you can pick it up on Spotify or iTunes. So thanks very much for watching. Do check out some of the other videos here on the channel. Bye for now.